Alright guys, so to kick off the new year, I decided to show you all a very powerful and very fooling card trick that uses a completely borrowed and shuffled deck of cards. So without further ado, let's get right into the performance. So before we actually start the trick, I'm going to have the spectator just choose any pair of cards that they like, and let's actually just use the aces here because they're right next to each other. But it can really be any choice, and once we have a pair, we'll just set them aside. We will get back to these a little bit later. But for now, we do need the spectator to select any card in the deck. So I'm just going to spread through here, and they can touch any card that they like. Let's say they go for this one, and I'll just lift up the cards. Hopefully you can see this in the camera here. But this is the card that you will remember. Once the card is remembered, I'm just going to simply place it back in the deck and immediately hand the deck over to the spectator to shuffle. So they can mix this as much as they wish, and let's go ahead and give it a riffle shuffle. We can also give it another one as well. Really, truly doesn't matter. We can also cut the deck like this. But yeah, once the card has been lost and shuffled and cut into the deck, we can move on to the aces. So I'm just going to very cleanly place one on top of the other, right here on top of the deck. And then I'm going to cut these somewhere in the center of the pack. And what I'm going to try and do with these aces is something that is known to magicians to be a very difficult feat to accomplish. But what I'm going to try and do is essentially shuffle one card in between the aces. And I'm going to try and do this in just one simple riffle shuffle, okay? And I'm going to do this as cleanly as possible so that you can all see what's happening here. It's just going to happen on the count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. And that should be it. I'm not sure if this worked, but we'll see. If I just square up the cards, just like this, I'm just going to very cleanly spread through the deck right now. Ooh, it seems that we've actually shuffled 2 cards in between, but I guess that's fine. I mean, that's bound to happen. You know, it's just a riffle shuffle. Can the spectator actually do me a favor, just take any of them and just, we'll get rid of one here. Just take one. Let's say they take this one and we'll just lose it in the deck. That leaves us with just one card in between, right? And remember, you shuffled your card in between, you know, all these other cards here, and there's just, the chances of me shuffling your card in between the aces is 1 in a million, right? Well, how crazy would it be if I actually did shuffle the 5 of diamonds in between the aces? And that right there is the trick. Completely impromptu, borrowed deck of cards. And yeah, that is the trick. So if you guys want to learn how it's done, be sure to stick around for the tutorial. All right, guys, so here's the tutorial for the trick that you just saw. So this plot has always been a dream card trick of mine to come up with because I just love the concept of you being able to perfectly execute a shuffle and have a card be sandwiched in between a pair of cards. I just love the idea of that trick. I have done a version of that trick on this channel before where you use a pharaoh shuffle, but it's very technical, very, you know, tricky and advanced, and you have to count the cards a lot, and it didn't seem as fair as I sort of wanted it to be. But then I came up with this version of it recently, and I think this is a much more fair looking version where the spectator truly gets to shuffle their card in the middle of the deck. You genuinely don't really have to control this card to a specific location. The trick sort of just automatically happens. And what you saw in the performance is just one possible outcome of what the trick might look like. In essence, this is a multiple outs trick, but it's not exactly what you would think, like every out looks completely different than the last. All of the outs look pretty much the same, more or less. More often than not, you will be left with one single card in between the aces, and I will go through every single possibility that occurs so that you will be prepared to encounter it for whenever it happens. But yeah, let's get right into how this trick actually works. So like I said, this is a genuinely borrowed and shuffled deck of cards. You don't need to do any preparation before you begin this trick, which is just amazing. The only thing you need to do before you actually start is just have the spectator name any pair of cards, and let's just go ahead and use the aces just to be consistent, but they can genuinely choose any pair. But now we're going to have the spectator choose any card, and this is how you are going to let the spectator shuffle their card in the middle of the deck. So first you're going to spread through the cards and have the spectator just touch anyone. Don't pull it out, just touch one. Let's say they touch this one here. What you're going to do is out jog the card like this in the middle of the spread, and then raise your hands to show them the card. And in this case, we have the 7 of spades. And what you're going to be doing as you are raising your hand, you're actually going to be using your thumb here to bend upwards the bottom left corner of the card. And what this is going to do is create what's called a crimp. And this is not going to ruin the cards, don't worry. As long as you don't perfectly fold it over, just give it a little tiny bend so it sticks up. This is totally fine as long as you can clearly see that this card is bent. That's all you need to do. And remember, this is all happening under the cover of the spread, so the spectator will not see anything happening because this is all behind. And once the card has been crimped and remembered, you're going to simply square up the card into the deck, and now if you were to look at the edge of the deck, you would very clearly see the spectator selection sticking out in the middle. You are going to use this to your advantage and keep this a mystery from the spectator as you hand this over to the spectator to shuffle, and they can genuinely now mix the cards as much as they wish, completely losing their card in the middle, and they can even give it a riffle shuffle if they'd like as well, and cut the cards as well. And all you're going to do is take the cards back and just see where that crimp card is located. And in this case, I actually got really lucky. The card is located directly on the bottom here, just got shuffled to the bottom of the deck, and I can see that because of the crimp. But let's just say, for example, it gets lost here. All you're going to want to do is make sure to control this card to the center of the pack, so it ends up somewhere directly in the center. Right now, it's a little bit lower than halfway, so all I'm going to do is just cut a small amount of cards from the top and move those to the bottom, and what that will do is it will reposition the card to be roughly in the center, more or less. And this is where you want your selection to end up, somewhere in the middle. So all I do is take the cards back, I look wherever the crimp is, and then I just cut the cards to rearrange it so it's in the center of the pack. And now I'm going to place the cards on the table and begin by using the aces. I'm going to take both of them and drop them face up on top of the deck, and then I'm going to cut about a quarter of the cards, more or less, like this much is fine. About a quarter of the cards onto the table and then complete the cut. What this will do is it will place the aces in the lower half of the deck, and it will place your selection in the top half of the deck. And then you're going to look at the edge of the deck and try to split this and evenly as half as possible, or try to split it in half so that you can see where the crimp is and then see where the aces are in the deck, and kind of cut relative to where that halfway point would be so that the cards will end up in very similar positions respectively in their packets. And that's essentially the goal, is you want the cards to end up very similar positions, because then you're going to be riffling the cards and shuffling them together, and you're going to basically just be hoping that the card ends up in between the aces. And you can clearly spread the cards out here and show this, and I find this to be more successful when you riffle the corners of the cards and not when you do it like this. So I would refrain from doing it like that. I would encourage you to riffle with the corners because it allows you to get a more precise shuffle, but really just try to shuffle it quickly and as precisely as possible. And let's just see what happens if we do this right now. So I'm just going to shuffle and square up the cards, and I'm going to now pick up the cards and look at where my crimp is so I remember it, halfway, a little higher than halfway in the deck. And I'm just going to spread through, and I'm going to continuously eyeball the corners of these cards. So I'm going to look at the corners and try to see where that crimp card ends up. So I can actually see right here that the crimp card is right here. This is the 7 of spades. I can just see that because I can see that the corner is bent up slightly. It might be hard to see that on camera, but trust me, in real life, it's very, very simple if you're just staring at the corners to see where that crimp card ends up, and I can see that that card is right here. So in this case, the card obviously did not land between the aces, and that's totally fine. If we actually look here, I actually missed the shuffle, so I actually didn't even get a single card at all in between the aces. And if this does happen, this is okay. You can actually go again. So you can actually completely reset and just say, actually, you know what, let's go ahead and reset because I need to retry this. And then you can just cut the card back into the middle, and then just say, it's a very difficult thing, let me just try again. Place them on top, and then we'll cut about a quarter of the deck right here. And now I'm going to split this in half and try my best to shuffle them together and go 1, 2, 3, and we shuffle them together. And now let's go ahead and take a look at where that crimp card is right over here and see where it ended up relative to the aces. So actually I can see right here, the crimp ended up right above the aces, which is actually totally fine if that happens. I can see my crimp card is right here, the 7 of spades. More often than not, this is the scenario that will happen. You're going to simply cull it underneath the spread like this. And once the card is culled, you are going to spread until you see the aces with the card sandwiched. And then you are going to lift up right below the card that's in between the aces and actually insert the selection to go in between the aces and that card. But you're going to do this as you continue to spread. So they're not going to see that card being inserted. And then you are going to say, now of course, this could just be any card. And you're going to square up the cards. Of course, this could just be any card that I shuffled in between the aces, but it would be more impressive if we actually took a look at this card and it was a card that you would recognize. And what you're going to do is spread off until you see the first ace. Drop all these cards, just spread off one single card, and then you're going to use your pinky count to count 2 cards, and you're going to get a double ready. And then you're going to lift up at that double and just get it sandwiched in between the aces. And now you can very cleanly flip over this image here showing a single card in between the aces, and that is the 7 of spades. But of course, this is actually a double. To clean this up, however, you can actually grip the double out of the spread like this, and then you can do what's called the KM move, which is very cleanly grab the back card as you flip your wrist over like this and flick the cards, set this down, and then you can kind of reposition so the card is back in the middle. And now you can hand this out for examination and everything can now be examined in the deck. Okay, so that was one possible out. And now I'm going to show you what to do if the crimped card ends up below the aces. So if I'm spreading and I don't see the crimp card here, but there is a card sandwiched, I'm going to out jog these cards in the deck, and then I'm going to spread until I see my crimp card in the middle, and I can see that clearly right here, 7 of spades. I'm going to now cull this card underneath the spread until it reaches the bottom of the pack, and then I'm going to get a pinky break on this card and do a Vernon transfer sort of slide out move where I sort of ride the card along with my hand as I grip the other 3 cards, and I'm going to just grip these together. Now what I'm going to do is essentially switch the order of these cards around, because this is a random card and this is their selection. So I need to sort of reverse this. I'm going to hold these in middle grip and take the first ace into my hand, take the second card, place it here, and then the third ace, place it here. And all I have to do is sort of square up the cards like this. So I have a double here, and I say, can you actually take the card? And I'm just going to press the double forward and then slide the top card back and then press this forward and ask the spectator to take a look at the card and grip it out themselves. They're going to take the card out, look at the 7 of spades, and then you have a card in between here, obviously, but to clean it up, you just do a pinky pull down and reverse the order of these, place this on top, and then drop this on top of the deck. And now you're completely clean because you can now show the cards are clean. And that would be the end of the trick for that out. So those are 2 of the possible outs. And then there is the out that you saw in the performance where we actually had the card in between, but then also another card in between like this. We spread through and we see 2 cards or 3 cards. There could be more, obviously, but let's just say there's 3 in this case. In this case, you're just going to do a psychological force and magician's choice to have the spectator eliminate all the cards that are not the spectator selection. So you ask them to point to any 2 cards. If they point to these 2, just keep whichever one is their selection, and then point to whichever one, keep whichever one is their selection. Obviously, I'm sure you guys know how to do magician's choice. That's sort of the final out, because the last out is that their card directly actually ends up in between the aces. So you're spreading through, you see the crimp card, and you see it is the card in between the aces. This is the miracle hit scenario where you can actually take the cards out of the spread, take the rest of the deck, spread it out, and actually have the spectator flip over the card themselves, and everything is completely clean. This, of course, is the best case scenario, and believe it or not, it actually is a lot easier to achieve than you would expect. Just go ahead and try this out a few times, and you'll actually be surprised to see how close you'll be able to get, and you actually might be able to hit it more times than you would believe. But yeah, that is my new version of shuffling a card in between a sandwich. And yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this version. I think it's a really, really cool hands-off version. I think the crimped card allows for the spectator to handle the deck in such a free way, and it makes everything a lot more fooling to me. And that's the way I like to do card tricks. So yeah, anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and yeah, see you guys next time. Bye.